Exit algorithms. Scale smarter. Sell stronger.
Welcome to Exit Algorithms, the podcast where we decode what it really takes to unlock growth, streamline operations, and prepare your business for a high-value exit. I'm your host, Pete Vera, and today I'm joined by Bobby Casey. He's a lifelong entrepreneur, international tax strategist, managing partner of Global Wealth Protection, and founder of Business Anywhere, an all-in-one platform that helps location-independent founders form U.S. companies, get virtual mailboxes, and manage compliance online. Over the past 2 decades, Bobby has started, bought, and sold multiple companies and helped thousands of clients legally reduce their tax burden, protect their assets, and build borderless businesses. Bobby, excited to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Pete. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Yeah, I'm excited for this. I'd love to hear, going in depth a little bit about your background and how you ended up doing the work you do today.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So my grandpa had a chain of restaurants. Actually, before I was born, he retired by the time I was born. But he had a chain of restaurants, so he had that mindset. My dad had a construction company. And so I was raised kind of not in the path of like get good grades, get into a good school, get a good job, that kind of thing. I mean, my parents, they weren't pushy, but, of course they wanted me to go to college and do the traditional path that everyone's supposed to do, of course, but they weren't pushy about it at all. And just kind of by default, my entire mindset growing up was never what kind of job am I going to do? It's what kind of company am I going to start? I went to school, I dropped out, went to university when I was 18, dropped out when I was 19 to start a business. It failed pretty miserably. Started another one, it failed pretty miserably. I started another one that did pretty well that I did end up exiting about 12 years later, I think, in my 30s. And so my entire mindset growing up, like just as a kid sitting around the dinner table with my dad, we would talk about like tax planning and tax optimization and company structure. And, I learned how to read like P&Ls and balance sheets and stuff like that when I was a teenager. I started investing in stock when I was 14. Like I had my own trading account when I was 14. So wow. I was like, I was just in that mindset from a pretty early age. I just grew up like that. Dropped out of school, started the businesses. I also, in there, I bought and sold a restaurant at one point. I had a real estate business as well, which I bought and sold. And I ended up selling that. It was a service company. We did installations across the U.S. and I ended up selling that company in my early 30s. And well, before I get into that, to rewind for a second, you asked how I got into what I do now. So in my 20s, I ended up hiring somebody like me to help me with like mainly asset protection and some structure planning and a little bit of tax planning. So I hired somebody basically that does like what I do now because at that time I had a business that was doing pretty well. I had the real estate stuff, I had the restaurant, and I had a bunch of things going on. And I was late 20s and I felt like I had some risks on the table there. And so I hired somebody like me, and through the process of working with him, I was really intrigued by the process. I really liked the puzzle solving of it. And so when we kind of finished my project, so to speak, I went back to the guy and I said, look, I got a bunch of friends that are in the same situation as me. So like at that time, well, actually still today also, all my friends are entrepreneurs. I don't really have any friends with jobs. And I say that because, for me, one of my highest values has always been, freedom to do what I want when I want. And I was always, I would call my friends up and, hey, you want to go ride motorcycles today at, 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon? And people with regular jobs can't do that, but people who have their own businesses can. I had only friends that had their own businesses because I don't know, I just didn't associate people with regular jobs. And so I told the guy I was working with, I said, I got a bunch of friends kind of in the same boat as me because everyone I know owns their own business. If we work with them together, maybe you can train me a little bit on how to do this and teach me. and we can share some money on these clients. And he's like, yeah, okay, sure, why not? So that's kind of how I started doing that. That was back in like 2001, I believe, 2000 or 2001, something like that. And that's kind of how I got into it, as kind of like a side gig. And then over the next few years, I ended up selling the restaurant, selling off the real estate stuff, selling the service company. And I just was like, I don't know, I had one of these moments like, what am I going to do with my life kind of thing. And I said, actually, I kind of like doing that consulting thing full time. So I kind of formalized that into a quote real business around 2008 or 9, so almost 20 years ago. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into what I'm doing now. And then we talked a little bit on the pre-show. I have a couple of other companies too. One of them is a trust company in the Caribbean. We do offshore company formations, registered agent service, and trust. We do trust formations and trust service and private interest foundations. And then the other one is Business Anywhere, where we are kind of the startup toolbox, like you mentioned, where we do the U.S. company formations and registered agent service and virtual mailbox and helping with bank account openings and bookkeeping, tax filings. So those were actually spinoffs of the consulting business because I basically got tired of referring other partners out for things that my clients needed. So I just started those companies. So, and then I guess somewhere in there, around 2016, I also started with a partner. Actually, well, rewind to 2014, I was a partner in a cryptocurrency mine in the U.S. I was one of the early investors in it, and I sold out my share in 2016, took the money from that, and started my own crypto mine with a friend in Europe. And then about 4 years later, 2020, I think, or 21. It was either 20 or 21. I sold my share of that business back to my partner. So yeah, I've had a couple of exits. I guess if you look at it like that, technically speaking, I've had like 3 exits. Although, like the restaurant, I don't know if I consider that an exit. That was just like a small restaurant that I sold. But if you want to call it an exit, I guess. Funny thing is too.
I'd like to focus first on, the business sales that you've done. Were there any things, now looking back and having, advised people on their business exits, what would you have done differently now?
So the restaurant was the first business I sold. So my advice there is don't buy a restaurant, so that way you don't have to deal with selling one or owning one. You don't have to deal with buying it, owning it, or selling it if you never do it, right? So that would be my first advice. I say that jokingly. Obviously, there are some exceptional restaurant owners that do amazing jobs, and I think it is possible to run a very successful restaurant. But like a lot of things, a restaurant is such a time-consuming endeavor. It's got to be your life. And I had 2 other, in addition to that, I had 2 other businesses going on, and one of them was a pretty, not, let's say, mid-sized business at that point. So it just ate a lot of time, and it's just too distracting. So probably one of my big lessons there is stay focused on the things that are giving you your biggest return. But again, but I have to say, for me personally, I wouldn't change a thing. Like, one of my biggest core philosophies is, maybe my biggest core philosophy of life is, you never regret the things you do, only the things you don't do. And so I wouldn't change a thing, because while owning, buying, selling the restaurant was not the most lucrative endeavor for me. I mean, it did okay, actually. We made money, and I sold it for double what I paid for it. So that was okay. But it wasn't the most lucrative thing. But man, I learned so much. I met a lot of really great people. Being in the community, you just meet so many people, because, you just got people coming in, and you're the guy who runs the restaurant. And so, you make a lot of friends. So I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change anything about it. My view on that is, like I said, you never regret the things you do, only the things you don't do.
Yeah.
I never regret the things I do, even if they weren't the most lucrative. Even if they were the biggest mistake ever, I just consider them to be learning experiences and educational moments. To me, the only thing I ever regret are the things I look back on and I think, man, I wish I would have X. I wish I would have started that business. I wish I would have invested in. I wish I would have bought Bitcoin in 2009. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I wish I would have bought Nvidia stock 12 years ago, right? Like stuff like that. Like you only regret the things you don't do. It's always the things you don't do that you regret. And I never regret anything I do because I look at everything I do as like who I am today, who you are today, who everyone is today is a compilation of every choice we've made up until this point, right? And for me to say I regret something I did years ago fundamentally means I don't like who I am today because I am exactly who I am because of those choices I made in the past. And I love who I am. So there's no way I can regret things I did in the past.
Yeah. How can business owners, in your opinion and your experience, prepare for a sale to maximize their value at exit and just satisfaction with the
Right.
outcome?
So looking back on that, from my own experience and from several other clients I've seen that have had this experience, I think one of the most important things, if you are building a business, when you start the business, you need to think about what your end goal is. Like, are you starting this business to be a lifestyle business that you're going to do for 20, 30, 40 years, pass it down to your kids? Or are you building this business for the purpose of selling? If you're building the business for the purpose of selling, you've got to treat it just like you are buying Nvidia stock or Apple stock or Home Depot stock. You've got to treat it like an asset that you are maximizing value of that asset. So you need to have a super clean bookkeeping records. Your legal compliance needs to be perfect. Every step of the way needs to be perfect. You need to build systems in your business because if the business relies on your hourly input or it collapses, you don't have a business, you've got an expensive job. If you can't take a 2-month vacation from your business with no negative consequence, you don't have a business, you've got a job, full stop. Okay? And if you're building a business to sell, you've got to look at it like that. I need to be able to take a 2-month vacation with no negative consequence because that means I have all the systems in place. I've got the right team doing the right things in the right places. And even if I take 2 months off, will my team, and someone quits, will my team step up to the plate and hire the right person based on the systems that we have in place? If you're building a business for a lifestyle business, those things aren't super critical. People, like the restaurant, people come in the door and they're like, hey, Pete, how's it going today? Good to see you. Because you're the guy, right? You're the guy. You're the reason people come to that restaurant, or the reason people come to your plumbing business, or the reason people, come to your whatever business. Like, you're the guy. So if it's a lifestyle business, that stuff's not that important. I mean, it's helpful, but it's not critically important for the purpose of selling. As an entrepreneur, you, me, and every other entrepreneur on the planet, what do we care about? The next thing, right? All we care about is the next thing, the next sale, the next hire, the next deal, the next trade show, the next product launch, whatever, the next thing. We don't want to think about things like bookkeeping and legal compliance and putting systems in place and creating SOPs. I mean, what entrepreneur wants to sit down and write an SOP? Holy shit. That's like pulling out my fingernails. Like, I don't ever want to sit down and write an SOP. Like, fortunately, we are probably in the greatest time in history for getting these things done, right? Because, I mean, we can just like tell ChatGPT to write us an SOP using our company knowledge database, and like that stuff happens like automagically now.
Mm-hmm.
But still, nobody wants to sit down and write an SOP. Nobody wants to sit down and write an employment manual or a hiring manual or all these things. But if you want to build a business for longevity and a business to sell, you have to have those things in place because, number one, your buyer wants to see them. But number two, it drives your multiple. Like, it definitely drives your multiple. Like, if I have a business that I run by the seat of my pants and everybody has to come to me to figure out how to do something, and the buyer comes in and figures that out, I may get a multiple of 2 or 3 maybe, if I have a whole team in place and systems in place and everything is built out, even with the same revenue number, I might get a multiple of 6 or 8.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an
I
asset
mean,
that'll continue to run without barely any involvement at that point, right?
right, but this point like deserves a little bit, I think a little bit more attention because people who want to sell their business forget about this key factor is the systems in place drives your multiple because your buyers don't want to step into a shit show. Your buyers want to step into a turnkey business. They can drop a manager in place who can replicate you because they have SOPs and manuals to read. So, like, if you're talking about a business with, let's say, an EBITDA of $1 million, and you have nothing in place, you're talking about maybe a $2 or $3 million valuation versus maybe up to an $8 million valuation with systems in place. I mean, you're leaving an enormous amount of money on the table by not putting systems in place.
Yep. Not to
Like,
mention, it also makes it more enjoyable business to run when you do have those in place as well, right?
you do once you get all of those things done, but it makes it an ungodly, unenjoyable business to run when every day all you're doing is writing SOPs, right? But you have to get over that hump and get the system built so that everything is there. So it's pain in the beginning to have the pleasure later on, I guess, if you want to look at it from that perspective. But other things I've seen, like people that have done, is selling the business too late.
Mm.
I'm sure you've probably seen that. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. But you're on this growth. I'll give you an example. I had a good friend of mine. I won't name any names, but she had a business, a service-related business, but it was quite a big business. I mean, it was doing a few million a year. I remember she was doing, I don't know, like smaller, 2, 3 million a year, something like that. And she started talking about how she wants to sell the business eventually and cash out and do something different. And she had these other dreams. And I'm like, okay, when are you going to do it? She goes, you know what? I'm going to start the process next year because we're growing really fast right now. And when we hit my numbers next year, that's when I'm going to sell. So then I would talk to her a year later. I'm like, okay, you ready to sell? And she'd say, well, we hit all of our numbers. We blew everything out of the water. Everything's amazing. But we're still growing super fast. So I'm going to wait one more year to sell. Well, I'm sure you know kind of where this is going, right? Like, and this went on for a couple of years to she got to the point where I don't exactly remember the revenue, but I think it was a little over 10 million. And the business was quite profitable, at least she thought it was. And all of a sudden, she went out of business. Like, she completely went out of business. Now, what happened was she had a CFO that she had hired who ended up embezzling a bunch of money and basically just wiped all the cash out of the bank accounts, maxed out credit cards and credit lines, and literally vanished into thin air. So she didn't have checks and balances in place or systems, right, in place to protect those sorts of things. And she lost interest in the business herself, which is ultimately the problem. Is she no longer cared about the business. All she saw was a number that was growing a little bit, or in some years a lot each year. And from an ego perspective or a greed perspective, ultimately, a greed perspective, she's growing and she goes, but if I wait one more year, I'll get my revenue and profit numbers are going to be higher, and that's going to make my multiple higher, and I'm going to get so much more money if I wait one more year. And one more year became one more year, became one more year. But in that time, she lost interest in the business, which is why she lost control over it, because she didn't care anymore. So that is a thing I've seen multiple times, is when you don't really care about your business anymore. Like, honestly, you should sell while you still love it. But if you get to the point where you don't care anymore, that is the very day you need to call the business broker and the CPA and the tax lawyer. Like, you need to have those meetings same day. Like, get out of that business now. Like, because it's a ticking time bomb the moment you don't care about it anymore. No one cares about your business like the owner. And at that point, yeah, maybe you have like some systems in place and that's why it's doing well autonomously. But if you as the owner don't care, you're also losing sight. And that's exactly what happened to her. Like, she had gotten married, second marriage, and the other guy had a really successful business, and they were traveling all over the world all the time, and she was just like on like Zoom calls every other week with the team, and
Oh, man.
she just didn't know what was going on in the business, and the CFO literally vanished with a few $1,000,000, and she had a lot of employees, and she couldn't pay them, literally couldn't pay them. Like everyone got fired, everyone basically got laid off with no salary for whatever the previous month or whatever it was, and vendors didn't get paid and all that stuff. And
Disaster.
what do you do? So, like a big thing there is if you're growing the business and you know you want to sell it, don't be so damn greedy. Sell it when you're on the upswing. Like, sure, maybe you can wait one more year to get that higher multiple and so on. But also, that next year, COVID could happen too, right?
Right.
Like that next year, what's the new virus they're talking about now? I don't know, whatever this new one is, it's probably going to shut the economy down next year. Whatever the next pandemic is, we could have that and your business gets crushed by the pandemic. I mean, it depends on your business. Like I had one good friend of mine and a client who was in the actually he's another good example of somebody who should have sold his business sooner. During COVID, he's in the sports equipment business, outdoor sports equipment, and during the pandemic, his business exploded. Because people couldn't go to the gym anymore, and they couldn't do a lot of like activities, so people started buying outdoor sports equipment to go into nature, like mountain biking and kayaking and paddleboarding and all that stuff. And his business exploded during COVID. And he was like, I'm going to sell my business. I'm like, great, get it sold. And he got same thing. He's like, but it's growing. I want to wait till next year. Well, he had an artificial spike because of COVID. Well, when all the lockdowns, ceased, his business tanked. Like he went back to normal, but like it was kind of worse than that because he had also ramped up inventory for the preparation of the anticipated growth, but then the demand for his product kind of went back down to normal, and he had way too much inventory and no cash. I mean, he survived, but like he ended up having to fire sale a bunch of inventory. He started the process to sell the business. It was like spring of like 2023.
Oh, it was ending at that point.
It was like the very end of when everything kind of quote went back to normal. And when it went back to normal, his demand went back to normal. So his revenue just tanked. And the buyers, started asking for updated monthly financial P&Ls and financial statements. And they're like, whoa, your revenue's fallen off a cliff. And so
pulled out.
That they pulled out. They pulled out of the sale. So like if he would have sold 1 year earlier, man, he would have cashed out, a solid low 8-figure number. Yeah. But he waited just a little bit too long. So timing is everything in, like most things in life. And of course, there's no way to predict the future. If your business is growing and you want to sell it and that number looks like a good number for you, don't be greedy. If that's your goal is to sell, don't be greedy. Just make it happen. Don't look back. If it sells and then next year you see the business doubled in value, don't be like, oh my God, I could have got double the money. Don't do that. Move on with your life. You made good money. You made your choice. Stick with it and move on. But I think a lot of people, I've seen that way too often where they sell too late.
Yeah. Yeah, no, great war stories. Thank you. I think that is a crucial element, right, is the timing. Yeah, and I know you focus a lot on structuring, give a lot of consulting around it and helping businesses. I'm curious with exit planning, how does say international structuring affect the exit, and what do you have any recommendations? Say a business has a few years before they want to exit, what would you recommend?
So the exit kind of also depends on who your buyer is. So if, for example, you're raising money from like VCs or big money investors, the structure almost always, and this really is almost anywhere in the world, basically, if you're raising money from VCs, of course, the goal of a VC is to come in, give you a bunch of money and cash out in 5 years or something like that. And they want whatever, a 10x, 100x multiple, whatever their goal is. But you almost always are going to need to be a Delaware C-Corp if you're chasing VC money. And if you're not that Delaware C-Corp now, you're going to find out the hard way that you're going to have to be a Delaware C-Corp. Like I had a client, actually a German guy living in Europe. I think he was living in Uzbekistan at the time with a healthcare device startup. And we had originally started his company as a Wyoming C-Corp. And he had in his second year, he had a VC come in and want to give him $2 million. And they just straight up said, we'll give you the money if you're a Delaware C-Corp. If you're not a Delaware C-Corp, we're not interested.
Wow. It makes that much of a difference.
It's a huge difference. Yeah, it's a huge difference. So we ended up just moving the company from Wyoming to Delaware. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal to move it. But if you're chasing VC money, I don't care if you're a German living in Uzbekistan, a Chinese person living in Australia, or an American living in Des Moines, Iowa. It needs to be a Delaware C-Corp if you're chasing VC money, because they don't care. So the reason for that is Delaware has a specific court system for business disputes. It's called the Chancery Court System. They're the only state in the U.S. that has a very specific court system only for business disputes. And for you as the owner, it doesn't make that much of a difference to you, but for your investor, they want you to be a Delaware C-Corp because then your jurisdiction is going to be Delaware. So if there's ever a conflict and they need to sue you, I don't know, you didn't pay them the money or whatever, something happened and they need to sue you. They don't want to have to sue you in Iowa where you're in the regular court system where you could be sitting in court behind, a traffic ticket and domestic abuse and somebody shoplifting and all these things. Whereas the Delaware court system, it's strictly for business disputes, and you get court dates really quickly, disputes resolved really, really quickly there. So that's why investors want it to be in Delaware, because any potential future dispute, they don't want to wait 6 months or a year or 2 years for a dispute to resolve. They want it within 6 months, done and out, right?
Got it.
So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is that the same then philosophy if you're trying to sell to private equity?
Most likely, yes. Most likely private equity, but it depends. Private equity might be doing a roll-up, so they may not care too much about your company structure because they're probably going to create their own structure and roll your assets into that business anyway. So it might be less significant for private equity. I've seen it a lot. Private equity very often is they're buying you and 3 others just like you to roll you into a bigger company. So
makes sense. Yeah.
But it won't hurt you. It won't hurt you with private equity to be a Delaware C-Corp at all. It might help you a little bit just from the perception perspective, is they think you've done the right things from the beginning. So they might see your business as a bit more attractive because they're like, oh, Delaware C-Corp, good.
I see. Yeah. How long does that process take? Would you be able to do it in the same year that you're trying to sell, or does it take some advanced planning?
You mean to change your structure over to a Delaware C-Corp? So if you're already, let me clarify one point on company structure. So we're talking about the U.S. perspective right now. So in the U.S., you've got corporations and you've got LLCs and you've got a few other things like LPs, LLPs, partnerships, stuff like that. But for this purpose, we're going to stick with LLCs and corporations. When I say a C corporation, I do want to clarify a point. So from a legal structure, a corporation is a corporation. A C corp is the default tax status of a corporation. S corp is an elected tax status of a corporation or an LLC. A lot of people think I register a C corporation or I register an S corporation. That's not really what you're doing. You go to the Secretary of State and you register a corporation. By default, the tax election is C Corp. You can file a tax form and change the default tax election over to S Corp tax election by filing a tax form. But C Corp and S Corp is a tax status, whereas corporation is a legal structure in the state. So in the U.S., entities are not formed at the federal level. They're all formed at the state level. So there's a Delaware corporation, a Florida corporation, a Wyoming LLC, a California LLC. There's no such thing as a federal corporation or a federal LLC. They're formed at the state level. So you do have a lot of nuances in the states themselves on the entity structure and how they're dealt with and fees and legal issues depending on each one. So I just wanted to clarify that point. So you've got a corporation. A corporation has shareholders. A corporation is its own separate legal person, meaning it files its own tax return, a corporate tax return. Whereas an LLC, the default status of an LLC, a single member LLC, it's a disregarded entity for tax purposes. It does not file its own tax return. The owner files a personal tax return based on the income derived from the LLC. If you have a multi-member LLC, it's treated like a partnership, and then the LLC does file a partnership tax return, but all that does is issue a tax form out to the individual owner. The individual still pays the tax at the individual level. So partnership tax return, you file a 1065, and then you issue a K1 to the owners or members, and then the member pays the tax based on the income derived off that K1. Corporations are usually more looked favorably upon for bigger sales. So if you're talking like VCs, they're pretty much most VCs are going to require you to be a corporation with a C tax election, and almost all of them are going to require you to be a Delaware C corporation. I mean, there could be some that don't require that, but it doesn't necessarily hurt you to start with a Delaware to begin with. From a legal perspective too, I want to make a note, because for sure somebody's watching this going or listening to this going, yeah, but I live in Texas. Why don't I just register the corporation in Texas? Well, you can, and it depends on your ultimate goal of what you're trying to accomplish. If it's a lifestyle type business, you probably don't want a corporation anyway. You probably want it to be an LLC. And in that case, if you live in Texas and operate in Texas, you probably do want a Texas LLC. If you're creating a company for the purpose of selling later on down the road, you probably want it to be a Delaware corporation with a C status, the default C Corp status. But because you actually live and operate in Texas, you're probably going to have to register it as a foreign entity doing business in Texas, which does increase your compliance costs. But again, it depends on your long-term goal. If you want to be short-sighted and registered in Texas, and then 2 years later you get a VC wanting to give you $2 million, it's going to be much more of a pain in the ass to move that to Delaware than if you just started in Delaware to begin with. And it's going to cost you a lot more money to move it than it would have been just to have it in Delaware to begin with a foreign filing in Texas.
Gotcha.
So begin with the end in mind. There's a place for LLCs too. So don't get. I'm not pro corporation. To be honest, with Business Anywhere, we register way more LLCs than we do corporations. Way more. They're much more flexible. Very often for asset protection, they're very good for asset protection. Like you might even want to have like an operating business, but then your assets are owned by LLCs. Like a really good strategy that a lot of people use that we do recommend, especially if you have some valuable intellectual property or equipment or buildings or like resources, stuff like that, is what I recommend is creating LLCs to own the assets and have your operating business a separate company. That separate company might be a corporation if your end goal is to sell the business to a VC or maybe a private equity. It could also be an LLC, depending on, like I said, keeping the end in mind and what you're trying to accomplish. But it's still a good idea to separate out the assets from the operational side of the business. I'll give you an example.
Liability purposes, reducing risk.
Yep, de-risking. So like I have a good friend of mine, he's a client who has a big landscaping company, and we created he has 3 LLCs for his business. One LLC owns all of his equipment. So all of his like trucks, his trailers, his tractors, all his heavy equipment is owned by one LLC. His building, so he owns the building where his shop is located. That is owned by another LLC. And then he has a third LLC that owns the operational side of the business. So if there's ever a liability issue, they're going to sue the responsible party. Well, the responsible party is going to be the operational business. I mean, it's a terrible example, but his guys are out mowing and throws a rock and hits a 3-year-old in the head. Right? I mean, I know, awful example, but whatever, it happens. And so if he wants to protect his other assets so he's not like immediately at risk of getting shut down, they're going to sue his operating business, but his operating business doesn't own any assets. He does have insurance, of course, that protects against those things, but at least he's probably his financial liability is probably going to be limited to the limits of his insurance, because the operational business itself doesn't really have any money other than what operational cash is in the bank account in that moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a big one is people who have intellectual property, patents, trademarks, copyrights. They've written books. They've got high-value websites. They've got brand names, stuff like that. They've got high-value domains. I definitely recommend intellectual property being kept in a separate LLC outside of the operational side of your business. Whether the operational side is a corporation or an LLC, I think those assets should be owned by an LLC. LLCs actually offer you a greater level of liability protection than a corporation. Most people don't really understand that, but they do.
Mm.
If the LLC is properly created, like with a proper operating agreement, and it's done in the correct way and maybe even in the right state, you have a lot of built-in liability protection. Like a Wyoming LLC, for example, has very clear asset protection statutes that protect the assets separately from the owner of the business. You have 2 different types of liability. You've got inside creditor liability and outside creditor liability. A corporation and an LLC are roughly equivalent when it comes to inside creditor liability. And what that means is a liability that occurred due to the activity of the entity itself. Okay, so using the landscaper, for example, his guy is out mowing, throws a rock, hits a 3-year-old kid in the head. That's an inside creditor liability because it happened from the operational activity of that business. And so generally, you personally are shielded from that activity within the operational activity of the business. Generally, not always. I mean, unless there is a personal negligence issue, but if it's a normal operational business thing, like I don't know, if the owner of the business was driving the tractor and he was drunk, then he could have personal liability. But normal operational activity, he would be shielded from that personal liability. But you have the other side of it, which I call outside creditor liability, and that is things that happen to you personally, where the creditor comes after your personal assets. So that could be, I mean, anything. Like, Pete, maybe you have a Super Bowl party at your house and one of your buddies drinks too much beer at your house, drives home drunk, and kills somebody on the way home. Well, the family of that injured person is going to sue all the way up the line. They're going to sue you because you served your buddy too much beer, right? Well, if they sue you, they're going to come after you and your personal assets. So if your assets are in an LLC, if done correctly, creditors can't attack your LLC. They're limited to, if done correctly, they're limited to what's called charging order, getting a charging order, which protects the assets within the LLC. So that's a longer discussion about charging order protection. Whereas if all of your assets were in a corporation, the judge can actually award them the shares of your company to satisfy the judgment. So
Interesting.
Basically, if all of your assets are in a corporation and had the Super Bowl incident and they sue you and they win and the judge gives them all the shares of your corporation. Well, whatever your corporation owns becomes their assets. Like you just lost it. But if all of your assets were in that LLC, then it's extremely difficult, not impossible because nothing's completely impossible, but it's extremely difficult legally for the creditor to touch those assets.
All right, next box to open is AI and technology. I know we talked a little bit on the pre-show. Your team built an AI tool for you recently.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how are you leveraging AI today? And where do you see it affecting your industry?
I mean, we use AI in every step of our business. Like if you go to our website, businessanywhere.io, just for fun, like I'm actually asking, not right now, obviously, but when we get off the call, if you have like 10 minutes to do this, I'd love to hear your feedback. But we use AI every step of the process through our client onboarding. So if you go to our website, like just to register an LLC, you'll go to our business registration page. It'll ask you like, what name do you want? Entity type, check availability. It does a quick search. And then you have to create your login. And then from there, you'll see every single page. We have AI videos on every single page that are interactive, answering your questions based on like for example, do you want us to do your EIN application? So there's a video there that answers your questions. What is an EIN? Why do I need an EIN? What does it do? How do I do it? These types of things. And then also on every step of our process, we have an AI chatbot. People absolutely hated AI chatbots, but they've gotten really ridiculously good now.
Mm-hmm.
So our AI chatbot is pretty darn good. And we also have the thing there like, hey, let me talk to a human, then it'll send a support ticket to a human who'll get back to you. But our AI chatbot, we trained it with all of our training materials for our company so that it can answer, like, if you're like, how much does it cost to register an LLC in Missouri and how long does it take? Like, our AI chatbot can answer that question for you. Like, so we're using AI like in every step of the process. We even have an AI texting tool. So when you go through the order process, if you exit the system, like if you don't complete your order, you'll get a text message from us, hey Pete, I see you started the process of registering that, I don't know, Missouri LLC. Did you have any questions? And then you can actually have a conversation with our AI tool and text message. And same thing, it's trained on our internal knowledge base. We have an internal AI knowledge base for our own team. So we use it for training. So like instead of like a team member having to go into Slack and how do I do X, right? They can actually just ask our internal AI chatbot, how do I do X? And it's already trained to answer that question for them.
Wow.
Like from a training perspective, it's been incredible. I mean, we use AI videos for training, like all of our new hire onboarding, like the first week when we hire somebody, all they do is watch videos because we have like training videos for everything and they're all like AI stuff. I mean, basically we built all of our SOPs and like employment manuals and all that stuff. We have them written, but we also have them out in videos where people can sit there and watch videos. You can do both. It depends on what you like. Maybe you like reading, maybe you like watching videos. Doesn't matter. You can read the transcript if you want. We have human endpoint touch, but almost all of our marketing up to final click the button to finalize is AI.
Wow.
From start to finish. Like everything from the content we need to publish to generate the right kind of traffic to our website, the videos that we need to create to answer clients' questions, all of it it's all AI use. I mean, I'd probably have to have double the team that I have now if it weren't for AI. Like when we do product launches now, my developers use Claude Code to do the initial like product rollout, not rollout, but the initial product creation. So like 2 years ago, if we created a new product, it would take at least like a month or more to create. Now it takes like 3 days. I mean, we do everything. I don't, in my opinion, now if you're not using AI in business, I don't know how much longer you're going to be in business, to be honest. Like I don't, it, you can hate it till your fingertips bleed. It doesn't matter because if you're not using it, you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage. So you better learn to deal with the hate because like you better dive in. My operations manager built me an AI tool. I didn't even know I needed this tool. Like it wasn't even something it wasn't a concept I even thought about. And she just said, you need this thing. And so she built this AI tool for me. And I'm like, wow, that's actually really ridiculously cool. Like we use AI for everything. My entire team, so we use Google Workspace for everything. So, we have the paid account for Google Workspace. So we have like the full version of Gemini AI. My entire team is in Gemini AI every day and our own internal like knowledge base AI every day.
Okay. It's like a custom GPT kind of deal?
Yeah. Yeah.
What did she build you?
The thing she built me is I'm the face for like our YouTube channel. So she created me a tool for content creation for our YouTube channel. It uses like our Google Search Console to see what the most search keywords are. And then it searches our competitors' websites to see like their highest ranking pages and YouTube channels, YouTube videos. And then it tells me what YouTube videos I need to make based on what people are looking for. Here's the next 5 YouTube videos you need to make. And then it'll tell me the subject line or the title of the video, and then it'll give me like a step-by-step outline on what I need to talk about in the video. So basically, I mean, it's not exactly scripted because I'm not reading a script, but it gives me an outline. So I'll put the camera up, and then I'll put the outline beside it, and I'll just basically walk through the talking points, and I'll expand on each talking point.
Yeah. That's great.
But I had no idea we needed that. I mean, we do YouTube videos now, and usually what we do is, we'll just look on our own YouTube channel and see which things get the most traffic and the most comments or whatever, and like which of our blog posts get the most traffic and stuff like that. And that's kind of but it's kind of seat of the pants. Like, okay, here's these 10 videos or these 10 blog posts got the most interest. Let's do something about this. But she just created an AI tool that pulls it not only from our own YouTube, our own blog posts, but it pulls it like from Google Search Console and Reddit and other competitors and stuff like that to narrow down exactly what we need to create content-wise, video content-wise.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. It's a great use case as well. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. It really, no matter what type of business, AI is only improving, only getting better. And if you're up against a competitor that's using it, it's going to be tough to compete.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe you don't think you need it. Just like I didn't think I needed this tool, but now I'm like, oh man, that saves us so much time and gives us better data to make our videos. So it's more focused on giving us better content that our audience is actually looking for, right? So I didn't know I even needed that. And now I'm like, how did we live without it? And so I know people out there running businesses that don't like use AI and they're like, yeah, but I don't need it. I don't even have a use case. I can't even think of a use case I would even use it. But like there's so many things you could be doing, like even basic things like using like an AI agent kind of like as a personal assistant to manage your calendar and respond to emails and stuff like that. Like that thing alone could take 10 hours out of your week. Like maybe it doesn't make you more profitable, but it would increase your quality of life by you working less,
100%. Awesome. Okay, Bobby, I got one last question for you. What is one practical tip for business owners who want to start legally reducing their taxes right now?
It depends on where you live. Like most of my clients that come to me for like company structure and tax planning, those types of strategy related consulting things. Most of my clients are location independent entrepreneurs that live outside of their home country. They're the digital nomad or the expat type. If you are that person, the most important thing you can do in that case is to hire somebody who deals with cross-border tax issues. That's the number one biggest tip I can give you. Like somebody that does like what I do, hire somebody like me to do this, because if you don't, those are complex issues. Let's say you're an American, with I don't know, let's say a software company living half the year in Thailand, 3 months in Mexico, and 3 months in Argentina. You're an American with Thailand, Argentina, Mexico, and then wherever your company is structured. So you got 5 different jurisdictions potentially as part of your planning structure. That creates a whole world of complications for you on how to best optimize to make sure you are the most tax optimized for your business structure. And if you think you can get that question answered on ChatGPT or Claude or by asking that question on Facebook, you're not going to get that done, because the problem is you don't even know the right questions to ask in that situation. Like, if you knew the right questions to ask, you may be able to get a reasonable response from an LLM, maybe, but there's so many nuances in there about how to do planning for that type of situation. Like, everything matters. Your citizenship, your physical residency, your tax residency, and they're not the same necessarily. Do you have kids? Are you married? Is your spouse from the same country as you? How old are your kids? The nature of your business. Where are your clients? How do you get paid? Do you have an office anywhere? All these things are huge variables that factor into all of that. And if you think you're going to sort that out on your own without talking to somebody who's been doing this for a while, good luck, man. Good luck. So my biggest advice, if you're in that scenario, hire a professional. Like, I had a client a few years ago, Swedish guy who basically wanted to move to Southeast Asia, had a good-sized business, wanted to move to Southeast Asia, and he literally went on Facebook to ask the question in a couple of Facebook groups. And somebody told him, oh, you should do what I did, register a company in Hong Kong and then just travel around as a tourist in Southeast Asia, and you won't have to ever pay tax. And that's what he did. And he was fined for 10 years. But 10 years later, he moved back to Sweden and re-registered and found out he did everything the wrong way. And he owed over $1 million in tax when he went home. So for 10 years, he thought he was doing everything perfect, right? And if you would have asked him on that year 8, year 9, what should I do? He might tell you, oh, you should just do this, like travel as a tourist and register your company in Hong Kong, and you won't have to pay any tax. Because he hadn't gotten to the point yet where he realized how big of a mistake that was.
Yeah.
Actually, the funny thing was, he came to me and he said, I'm like, why didn't you just hire somebody in the beginning to help you with the structure? And he goes, oh, it was too expensive. I'm like, well, how much was it? And he goes, man, it was probably like $5,000. I'm like, oh, okay. So $5,000 is way better than the over $1 million you owe now, right? And he goes, yeah, I get your point.
Yeah.
Depending on the size of your business, at a minimum, you need a really good CPA. If the business is big enough, you need a really good tax lawyer. So, honestly, most of my advice is going to be around finding professionals who know what they're doing, because I look at it like this. I know how to change the oil in my car. I can do it. It's not that hard to do. But is that the best use of my time? No, of course not. Do I really need to be crawling around under my car in the garage, getting dirty, using regular hand tools, and it takes me 2 hours to do it? Or should I take it to the garage and let a professional do it that takes him 20 minutes with the right tools? And I can focus on the things that I'm good at and let him focus on the things that he's good at, right? To me, it's the same thing like mowing. I don't have a yard. I live in a condo. But it's like mowing my grass. Do I know how to drive a lawnmower? Of course I do. But should I mow my grass? No, that's stupid. That's an absolute, complete, total waste of my time. I mean, of course, unless I love mowing grass, if it's my stress release. Some people have that. It's their way to de-stress, and great, go for it. But for most people, it's a waste of your time to do things you're not an expert at. Hire the expert to do the thing so that you can do the thing that you're good at, or spend time doing things you want to do. Hang out with your kids, your wife, go ride motorcycles, go play golf, whatever you want to do. Don't crawl around for 2 hours changing your oil, just like you shouldn't be sitting around on Facebook and ChatGPT and Claude for half a day or a day trying to figure out your tax planning. Like, that's stupid. Like, hire somebody who knows what they're doing. So same thing, if you're location based, go hire a professional, because like I hear this sometimes, like people say, oh, I can't afford you. Like you cost whatever the number is. Like you cost $5,000 to do this for me. I can't afford you. And my first question is, well, how much do you pay in tax? And they're like, well, I paid $100,000 in tax last year. And my response is, you can't afford not to have me. Like you can't afford to not have me, because I might be able to get your tax to zero. If I charge you $5,000 and you save $100K in tax, like not hiring me may be the dumbest thing you've ever done in your life. It's the best ROI you're going to get is to hire a professional. Like if you live in Des Moines, Iowa, hiring that CPA that costs you 5 or 10 grand a year to do your taxes, but saves you 50 grand a year, it's all about perception. So yeah, my advice there, hire professionals. Don't try to do things you're not good at. That's just a waste of time.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, good philosophy too on sticking.
I did, by the way, eventually go back to university for fun, and I got a degree in economics, but that's like macroeconomics 101, right? Like focus on the thing you're good at and let the other people focus on the thing they're good at.
Yep. Awesome. Man, I really enjoyed this conversation, Bob. I learned a lot myself. This has been great. If listeners enjoyed as much as I have, where can they find you and learn more about you and your businesses?
Yeah, sure. The easiest way to find us is businessanywhere.io. You can find us on the website there. We have a contact form if you want to reach out. You can schedule a consultation if that's what you want to do. Businessanywhere.io is our YouTube channel. Easy to find.
Awesome. I'll leave that in the show notes. Thanks so much for your time today, Bobby. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks for having me, Pete. Cheers.
Exit algorithms. Scale smarter. Sell stronger.